Hi, I'm Valerie Espinoza, your New Mexico Public Regulation Commissioner, and I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of our program. Today we have a very special guest and very special friend. His name is Carmichael Dominguez. He is a city councilor, amongst other things in his past here in Santa Fe, and I'd like to welcome you. And I want to take this opportunity also to thank you. I know that your term is ending here, and I've always been able to call you when I get calls from whomever. It might be one of my friends, it's a nurse. She says, oh, I need help with this, and I need help in my water and this. And I've always been able to call you directly and say, can you help this person? And you do, whether it's in your district or not. So just as a friend and as an acquaintance, I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for always attending any event I had, whether it was, you know, when I was county clerk and I did the state of the address of the clerk's office, you were there. And for over the years, you've just been a very interested citizen here, not just an elected official, but you've always cared and paid attention to what's going on in all areas of government, and you hold people accountable, but you are mostly, in my opinion, responsive. And so thank you. And so we hate to see you leave. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I mean, is there somebody who's running in your position?
So Romana Beta is running for my position, and it's uncontested.
So we do have access, continued dialogue, and if I'd like to interview Roman, I interviewed him when he was the city or county manager, and I know he's been at the city, and he's just a decent, honest, remarkable person like you. So hey, we're in good hands.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry too much then. But seriously, let's go back to you, and again, I want to thank you, and I'm sure everybody watching would like to thank you. And so what next for you, and then we'll get into all the good things you did at the city. Well,
first of all, let me thank you for having me the number of times throughout all these years. Thank you for your public service. Anyone who runs for public office, especially if you're running for the right reasons, deserves to have a lot of credit, because it's not an easy gig, especially in these times. Being an elected is not always that glamorous or that fun even. So, you know, as a resident, as a citizen, I want to thank you for your service as well. And it's been a pleasure to work with you and to be responsive to you and to really all the other constituents, because that's part of what the job entails, is not only representing your district and your constituents, the people who elected you, but representing as many people as you can. And so, you know, that's part of the job. And so, you know, I appreciate the thanks, but really it's part of the job. And so it's been a pleasure. Sometimes you don't get to every single phone call, and sometimes you don't get answers as quick as you can, as you'd like to, but nonetheless, you know, I've tried my best to be responsive and you know, provide people with the access to the resources that I have access to myself. So what's next? Well, my term ends now in March, and then I retire from the Department of Transportation in June.
Goodness.
Yeah.
You're not going to stay idle, I'm sure.
No. I'm going to take a little bit of time off. I'd like to travel a little bit, maybe.
So you work at the DOT, and you've worked there how many years? Or
25 years.
25 years at one location.
Yeah.
They're going to miss you. We're going to miss you. They're going to miss you. And goodness. So where are you going to travel to?
I don't know. I'll probably go see my son out in California a little bit. Maybe I'll take a little vacation. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to take some time off to just kind of rest and gather myself and maybe enjoy life a little bit, learn how to fish, and maybe learn how to golf. You know, so we'll see, and spend some time with my dad. He's not getting younger, and so, you know, I'll just kind of do that, and then we'll see. You know, I plan on staying active, whether it's at the local level or the state level, in some capacity. You know, probably go get another job, because I can't just not do anything. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see.
And I hate to tell you this, but your phone's not going to stop ringing. So that's the way it works. It's just you stay connected, you stay, you know, you still continue to help people get what they need and contact who they need at state government or city or county.
Right.
But anyhow, it's good to know that, you know, you have to take time for yourself and just kind of, you know, get away from all the hustle and bustle.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, so let's go back to your career. I understand you were a school board member.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, you know, fascinating to see you. You know, I was thinking someday, you know, my grandmother that raised me was an educator, and I've always thought, well, hey, I'd like to be an educator in my next life.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, since you've been on the school board, I think that's a very rewarding career as well.
You never know. I mean, my sister's a teacher. She's a kinder teacher here in Santa Fe. And there's times when I'm really excited about the work that she does and the influence and impact she has on young kids. And so there are times, and then, you know, of course, with my school board experience, just knowing how important education is and the challenges that the education system has, there are times when I want to kind of go that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But
There's a shortage, right, of
Right,
teachers
right.
And throughout the state.
But then, you know, there's other times when I tell myself, well, you know, maybe I'm getting too old for that stuff. I don't know. You know, these kids are a lot different than they were when even 10 years ago, with technology and kind of the influences that they have out in society. It takes a special person to be a teacher, and so, but you never know.
I think you're right. My mother was an educator, like I said, for I think 37 years, and then she went back to substitute, and she had the same feeling too about, you know, the kids nowadays. They're, you know, there's you know, with the cell phones, and you've got to take that phone away to get the focus back on education. And these, you know, you turn into a millennial, and then, you know, there's
Yeah.
still that, you know, cell phone. It's a distraction. And so, but yeah, that might be an idea.
Yeah, we'll see. Really, the sky's the limit, and we'll see what life throws out there for me. And
I want to know how it goes, so you're going to have to give me some feedback. You know, I've been working at the lab 20 years, the state almost 21 again, and so I want to know what it feels like to retire.
if it's good, I'll let you know. If
And
it's
if it's
bad,
bad.
or maybe if it's bad, I'll let you know. And if it's good, I'll encourage you to kind of go in that direction.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'll bet you in your last, how many years as city councilor?
12 years as a city councilor. I was 4 years as a Board of Education member. So altogether, elected and appointed, I've been involved for 22 or 24 years. I was a planning commissioner. I helped establish policy on big boxes here in town, the big box ordinance, various other traffic calming commissions and committees. So when you look at officially appointed and elected, it's been about 22 or 24 years, somewhere around there. And then just altogether, my community experience as a Homeowners Association
Sure.
president, and just working with the kiddos in some capacity, probably close to 30.
You should have never brought up homeowners associations. Because, that is the hardest thing I find, to have to pay association fees, and then, in return, it's kind of difficult. What do you get back? And then there's no, cap on how much they can elevate the monthly charges. Where I'm at now, I'm glad, it hasn't gone up, but, previously it can be up to, 150, 130 a month. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of difficult, and I don't know, I mean, what your thoughts on that are.
Well, as an elected, the city of Santa Fe can't prohibit associations from being formed, right? And we don't enforce association covenants and restrictions. Those are really private agreements between the homeowner,
the jurisdiction
and
within
the association that they belong to. And you're right. I think that there are some associations that charge a lot of money, and don't spend that money necessarily the way folks would like them to. But there are some associations out there who don't charge a lot of money and are very transparent and really make sure that that money goes back to the homeowners in some form or fashion. So you know, it's tough. And as a former association president, I think I was only like 22 years old when that happened, and it's challenging because.
So you knew better
well,
than to buy a house that's governed by an association, I bet.
Well, at that time, no, but I mean, yeah, as I've gotten older, but you know, it's interesting that we're talking about that, because in some ways associations reflect or are a microcosm of our community at large, right? Some folks who can afford it and some folks who can't. Some folks who are reaping the benefits of it and some folks who don't.
That's a good point.
And so I've always kind of seen, you know, those as microcosms of the community, and the challenges that many associations see are consistent with the challenges that local government has as well. You know, you have maybe in an association you have a older demographic that has different priorities than members of the association who are of a younger demographic and have different priorities.
It's exactly right.
And you have that kind of in our community as well, right? You've got our community is getting older statistically, and so, you know, their priorities are different than, you know, a younger population who have kids and who are just starting their lives out, and, you know, that sort of thing. So it can be challenging, but
I know. And once, at one point, I called, I think, the city fire, because sometimes when people park vehicles on the road, it provides for a narrow passage, whether it's for a bus or an ambulance. Mm-hmm. And I you know, these associations should, you know, try to regulate if they would park on one side, to leave, you know, a free spot instead of trying to squeeze through or cause a traffic accident. So, boy, I should have known you were the association president long ago. Anyhow, so let's talk too about the city and some of your accomplishments, what you have spearheaded and followed through, that you can pat yourself on the back for.
Well, it's not very often that, unless you're on the campaign trail, that you
you remember those things.
Yeah. You know, so one of the things that I really have prided myself on is the fact that I've consistently dropped policy for the
That's true.
governing
I've read a
body
lot about you.
to consider. And so, you know, you kind of go through these peaks and valleys where you're really, really, really busy working on a number of policies, and you drop them, or when I say drop, I mean introduce them for the governing body to consider. And then you kind of go through a lull where you're working that policy, it gets approved, and then you kind of, you know, I guess take a hiatus for you're still involved working on helping other colleagues with some of their policies, but in terms of owning your own policy, you kind of go through these peaks and valleys. And so I know that I've done that over the course of my 12 years as a city councilor. It goes way back to, you know, the policies that I had, you know, the state of the city and the state of the state of the schools are policies that I dropped when I first became a city councilor, so, and a school board member.
And you meet how often?
We meet, well, city council meetings are every other week, but we also have committee meetings that.
How many different committees are there at the city, and how many do you sit on?
There's a whole bunch of, I can't even tell you how
many. Are you delegated or assigned by the mayor, or how does it work?
Yeah, the mayor appoints you, and the governing body, you know, either
ratifies.
Yeah. So when I first got elected, I was on, I thought probably every committee there was. It felt like it. Public utilities, public works, finance, the Children and Youth Commission, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board, you know, you name it. Now, I'm the chair of the Finance Committee, and I've been the chair of the Finance Committee for 4 or 6 years now.
Ah, let's talk about the budget then.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I also sit on the Buckman Direct Diversion Board, and a few others, and I can't, MPO, I think. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at now, but, You know, I've sat on pretty much every other committee there was there.
So that means you don't just attend meetings on Tuesdays, is that right?
Wednesdays.
You attend Wednesdays, you attend them
You attend
throughout
all
the week.
Plus all the meetings that you have with your constituents, plus all the meetings that you have with staff to kind of sort things out. So there's a lot.
And nobody really realizes the devotion and the will that you have to serve. And sometimes people think, these guys, forget it, politicians.
They just go to meetings every other week and sit down for a few hours and rake in all this cash, and that's the furthest from the truth.
That's right. And, you know, I wanted to talk just briefly about ranked choice voting. I've got to give kudos to your city clerk, Yolanda. She's just really very astute and knows her job very well, and she's very honest. And so I'm not sure if I remember if the machines have the capability or they had to retrofit them. Do you know how that worked out after all when they moved to ranked choice voting?
So as you know, the public supported ranked choice voting back in 2010 or 2008, something like that. And what has kept us from implementing it all this time was the software that the state uses and that the county uses wasn't able to comply with the ranked choice voting nuances. And so what made this one so difficult was the company, Dominion, presented to the governing body back in October of 2016, believe it was. And there were a lot of things that they still needed to work out at that time. And so when we started preparing the 2017 budget, How
much did all that cost?
Oh, I can't remember, but it wasn't cheap. And we're not talking just about the software, right? We want to make sure that the city clerk's funded correctly to be able to do all the education that comes with it.
Has she had enough time to educate the poll workers?
I don't know. I know that Yolanda is a hustler.
Chop, chop.
She works. I have, of all the city staff and all the people that I know that are out there in the workforce, she's one that isn't afraid of challenges. She's not afraid of even trying something new. Under her watch, we've gone to public financing. We've done what do they call, convenience centers.
Right.
We've done a whole number of things with her as city clerk. So she's not afraid of change.
And what about you? What do you think about ranked choice voting without putting you too much on the spot, and given the amount of time and the very first election that's going to transpire on the newly retrofitted voting machines? I'm going to let you run with that, and then I'm going to put my 2 cents in on this ranked choice voting.
Well, I think that philosophically and fundamentally, ranked choice voting is a good thing, because it's intended, and studies show that when you have ranked choice voting, particularly minority candidates have an opportunity to get to the winner circle, if you will. More so with that kind of system than with just a straight up majority wins. So I think in that regards, I don't know. My problem is I don't know if Santa Fe is really big enough for that kind of system. I think that we have that progressive kind of intent or attitude that would support that kind of system, but in terms of the population and the numbers of voters and the electorate that's out there and the candidates themselves, I don't know if it's. I think that one of the differences is that ranked choice voting is intended to be instant runoff. Right.
It's not, though, right?
Well, it is.
It's not a runoff in a sense.
It's not a runoff, but it's an instant runoff.
Because you have to get such a percentage.
So one of the things that I think could happen is that, and I foresee this happening soon after the election happens, is that the city will go from instant runoff, which is ranked choice voting, to a runoff system where you have a whole number of candidates, and then if nobody gets to 50% plus one, the top two, have a head-to-head. So I foresee that happening. I think that lots of folks out there are confused.
Yes.
When I speak with voters, they basically say, well, I'm just voting for one person, or I'm voting for my top two. And so they're not really even utilizing ranked choice voting the way it's intended to be. And one of the things that makes it that much more complicated is that the only way you have a true ranked choice voting system is if everybody ranks, mandatory ranking. And that makes it that much harder because, we have folks that have been voting for however many years, and they're not only not going to like that system, but they're not going to understand that system. And so what we did this year, because it's so new and there's just so much work and so much education that has to go out, is we basically made it so that a ballot would not be rejected. It'll get rejected if you don't rank the first time. It spits it out and it gives you another chance to take that ballot.
So what do you mean if you don't rank it the first time?
So there's all sorts of different scenarios. You can vote for one person 5 times. In this case, there's 5 candidates. So there's 5 rankings. So you could vote for one person 5 times.
I wonder about that.
Well, it'll reject your ballot.
I see.
Right?
I see what you're saying.
And so you can submit it again and it'll take it. But, that's if that person that you ranked 5 times as number 1
disqualifies the vote.
Gets disqualified, then the rest of the votes don't count, right? But there's lots of different scenarios. You can rank the first 2 or first 3.
And just vote that way.
Yeah, you can just vote for one person. So what we did was we looked at all the scenarios and we tried to make it so that all the scenarios would be able to be counted the best that we could. But it just really speaks to how complicated it is. So I want to hear what
you want to hear what I have to say, right? So I can agree with, I don't know if you saw the story briefly. I think we're running out of time here. Anyhow, the story that Mylan Simonich wrote, how the ranked choice voting, is going to sort of skew, and I couldn't agree with him more because it's a very difficult process, and I could swear I saw that the council had tried to put it off till after this election, but I don't think that followed. Something happened that it didn't go through, and then I know that the 2 different court systems said, hey, we're going to go with this. Being a former clerk, I just sort of see difficulties in trying, from the norm to get people that have done things one way, and it's sort of like the presidential race. I'm all for the popular vote instead of, the delegate votes throughout the different states. So I'm like, win or lose all the way. And so I find it very difficult because if you don't have a second choice or a third or fourth or fifth choice, why should you be forced to categorize, just because you have to? In my case, I didn't have to. So, I chose to just do things the way I've always done it. Just, pick the choice, your candidate of the choice, the qualified choice in your mind, and run from there. But I can see election day kind of, people asking questions. And so people are going to have many, many questions. And I'm sure the poll workers will be trained and have the answers. But there's going to be confusion, so that's going to take some time to explain, and the lines are going to grow. But that's just my little. You're not supposed to predict as a clerk, but I just think that it was rushed, and I think that to try to accommodate such a special, important election, that this is just going to confuse things. So, for instance, there's no ranked choice in the city council races. There's only one or the other in my district. You have, I think, 2 candidates in the district I vote in, so it was really simple, one or the other. So there's no ranked choice voting capability for the council races. So that doesn't make sense. Do you know?
Well, in some districts,
there
is ranked choice voting because
there's more than one.
Right. But you're right. for my seat, there's only one candidate, and so, you know, he just votes for himself and he'll get 100% of the vote.
Right, that's it, and it's over.
Right. So there's lots of different ways to look at it, and I agree with you. I think that for me personally, and really as an elected as a representative, it would have been nice to take the time to really educate people about how it works, what it's intended to do, you know, and what the different scenarios are, and, you know, the training and all that other stuff. So
Yeah,
I
your
agree with
training,
you.
the training has, you know, choices of some ridiculously strange names, you know, what is it, the dog, the cat, the frog,
Yeah,
whatever,
Lucy.
Lucy, Ricardo,
Lucy
and
Frog or
I don't
something,
know.
yeah.
Anyhow, it's going to be a challenge, I think, and I wish you all good luck, and it's just something that, you know, could have waited. And then you notice, you know, we just had another bond election for the college, and I always thought that the whole intention of combining them is to reduce the cost. So there was a lot of confusion there too. People would go, you know, is this the college election or the city early voting? And so there's that confusion going on at the same time. But anyhow, I know we're running out of time, and I just wanted you to say a few words, if you'd like, and before we close.
Well, you know, there are so many people to thank, right? I want to thank God, first of all, for being there for me when things got tough and issues were difficult, and just the faith that I have in helping to guide me is always huge and number one. Of course, I want to thank my family for all the support that they've given me
Putting up
throughout
with
all
you.
these years, putting up with me, hearing me,
Being gone.
and even my coworkers at the highway department. You know, I pass things through them sometimes, or they'll hear me rant and rave, or really get, you know, upset with someone, or not, you know. So I need to thank them as well. I want to thank every single city employee for the work that they do as a public worker. I don't think that they get the credit that they deserve. They need more money. They need better equipment. They need better systems. They need better leadership. They need lots of things. And so they have done a great job making sure that this city runs, even though we haven't always been able to provide them the things that they need. And then I want to thank the constituents for putting me in office for 4 terms if you count the school board. They are a great constituency.
Which is your area, real quick?
District 3 is all pretty much Airport Road, on both sides, all the way to 599. There are some pockets in there that I don't have that have been redistricted to District 4. But when I first started, my district ran from St. Francis Drive all the way down to 599 between Cerrillos and Agua Fria, and all along Airport Road. And so that kind of just is shows you how much our community has changed and grown over the last number of years. So,
well, of course, everybody wants to live in Santa Fe.
yeah, we love it. 4 seasons in one day sometimes, huh?
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for being on the program, and you're going to have to keep us tuned in on what your plans are in the future, and we want to wish you lots of success, and especially with this new voting system, because you're still going to be in office, right? So we can call and say, hey, what'd you guys do?
No, actually.
Or when is your term up?
Now in March.
The end of March,
Yeah.
or?
Well, I mean, technically it's the night of the swearing
Election.
in. That's technically when they hand over the keys. But election night, it's
the curtains out.
Yep.
Well, thank you again for your service, and we want to make sure everybody gets out to vote, and I'm sure we'll see you out in the community. Feel free to come by the PRC if you have any issues, questions, with regards to your utility bills. If you want to come and complain, our office is full of, we get a lot of complaints in our office in District 3. So,
well, Valerie, thank you for having me, and again, thank you for all the service that you've provided to the community as well.
You've got me for 3 more years, so.
I got you on speed dial.
That's right, and my number won't ever change. So.
All right. Very good.
All right. Well, I think we have run out of time, and I just want to Again, thank you for being here. And if anybody would like to appear on my program, please give us a call at 827-4533. Thank you.